Keir Starmer has just detonated a political bomb that no one saw coming. In a move that has stunned Westminster, the Prime Minister has openly threatened to demote Sadiq Khan over a scandal that started with a mere £5,000 pay raise but has now spiralled into a full-blown crisis that could tear the Labour Party apart. This is not just about a salary bump. This is about control, betrayal and raw political power. Starmer is making it crystal clear. If Khan cannot fall in line, he will be cut down to size. The message is brutal, the timing is explosive, and the consequences could reshape British politics forever. For years, Sadiq Khan has walked the political stage as London's most powerful mayor, presenting himself as untouchable. But now the ground beneath him is shaking. And it's his own party leader who is turning up the heat. Starmer's fury, insiders say, is not just about numbers on a payslip. It's about the humiliation of seeing the Mayor of London take home more money than the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Think about that for a moment. The man overseeing one city now earns more than the man steering the entire country, managing Britain's defence, its economy, its international reputation. For Starmer, it is not only insulting, it is intolerable. The £5,000 pay raise has become a symbol of arrogance and detachment from the public struggle. Ordinary Londoners are drowning under the cost of living crisis, rent soaring, food prices skyrocketing, energy bills breaking households in half, yet City Hall seems to think it is business as usual. Not only has Khan accepted the bump that pushed his salary above the PM's, but his office has also ballooned in size, hiring hundreds of new staff while London streets crumble. Knife crime is spiralling, transport is collapsing into delays and cancellations, and housing has become a nightmare for working families. And in the middle of all this misery, the mayor gives himself a raise? The optics are poisonous and Starmer knows it. That is why this showdown is so unprecedented. Prime Ministers rarely, if ever, threaten to strip power from mayors. It simply isn't done. The relationship between Downing Street and City Hall has always been tense but polite, balanced but cautious, until now. Starmer has broken that convention with a direct and very public warning. Khan is on thin ice. If he continues to treat London like his personal fiefdom, his wings will be clipped, his authority crushed. That is not a private whisper behind closed doors. It is a televised message to every Labour mayor across the country. Step out of line and you will be next. The stakes could not be higher. If Starmer forces Khan into retreat, the Prime Minister emerges as a strong leader, proving he can impose discipline on even his most powerful colleagues. But if Khan defies him, if he digs in his heels and dares Starmer to act, then Labour faces the nightmare scenario of a civil war in broad daylight. Imagine the headlines if one of the party's biggest city leaders openly rebels against the Prime Minister just months before key elections. The Tories would not just celebrate, they would weaponise the chaos, portraying Labour as a party eating itself alive. Already, murmurs of discontent are echoing through Westminster's corridors. Some MPs are whispering that Starmer is risking too much by making Khan the enemy, while others are cheering him on, saying it's about time the Prime Minister showed he won't tolerate embarrassment from within. The split is growing, the tension thickening, and the pressure cooker inside Labour is close to blowing. For Khan, this is more than a battle over pay, it is survival. His allies in London are livid, briefing the press that the mayor won't be bullied, that he has a democratic mandate from Londoners, and that no Prime Minister, not even one from his own party, can simply strip him of his authority. But here's the danger for Khan. Public anger is boiling. Londoners are tired of the excuses, tired of being told to sacrifice while politicians help themselves. The more Khan defends his pay, the more he risks looking like the symbol of everything that is wrong with politics. Elitism, arrogance and indifference to ordinary people. And Starmer senses the opportunity. By drawing this line in the sand, he is not just punishing Khan, he's trying to show the nation that Labour is capable of policing itself, capable of putting accountability before loyalty. But it is a dangerous gamble. One wrong move, one show of weakness, and this entire strategy could collapse around him. What began as a simple pay dispute has now become a national test of leadership. And the outcome will decide not only Khan's fate, but the future direction of Labour itself. This is not just politics as usual. It is the beginning of a power struggle that could redefine who truly runs Britain, the Prime Minister in Downing Street, or the Mayor in City Hall. And in this kind of fight, only one man will walk away unscathed. The clash between Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan has now crossed a line that cannot easily be undone. What started with whispers in the corridors of power has exploded into the open, with both men standing their ground and neither willing to blink first. This is not just a personal spat. It is a confrontation that threatens to rip Labour apart from the inside. Every hour that passes, the tension builds and the stakes rise higher. Inside Westminster, the mood is electric, like the moments before a storm breaks. Senior Labour MPs are already choosing sides. On one flank stand the Starmer loyalists, furious at Khan for making the party look out of touch in the middle of a national cost of living crisis. These MPs argue that if Labour wants to convince the public it can be trusted to govern, then discipline must come first. And that means cutting Khan down before his arrogance infects the entire movement. To them, Starmer's threat is not reckless, it is necessary. But on the other flank are the pragmatists, the ones warning that this could backfire spectacularly. Khan, they remind everyone, is no minor figure. He is Labour's most visible mayor, a man with his own power base in London, one of the party's most critical electoral strongholds. Alienating him risks igniting a war in the capital, a city Labour cannot afford to lose. These MPs fear that the spectacle of a Labour Prime Minister attacking a Labour Mayor will look less like leadership and more like desperation. They worry that voters will see chaos, not strength. And then there are the whispers from inside City Hall itself. Khan and his allies feel betrayed, cornered and singled out for humiliation. They argue that his pay is set by an independent body, not by him personally, and that Starmer's attack is nothing more than a cynical power grab. But behind the official talking points, anger simmers. Sources close to Khan say he feels abandoned by his own party, treated like an enemy rather than an ally. The sense of betrayal runs deep, and that makes him dangerous because when powerful politicians feel cornered, they fight back. And when they fight back publicly, the fallout can be catastrophic. The timing could not be worse for Labour. Britain is already on edge. Families are buckling under rising costs. Public services are breaking down and frustration is spilling onto the streets. In London, knife attacks have become so frequent they barely make headlines anymore. The tube system is plagued by constant delays and housing costs are driving working people out of the city altogether. This is the backdrop to the scandal, a country in pain, a capital in crisis. Against this reality, Khan's pay rise looks like a slap in the face to every struggling family. And Starmer knows that if he does not act, Labour risks looking complicit. But here's the danger: Starmer is walking a knife's edge. If he pushes too hard, he risks sparking a full-scale rebellion inside his party. Already, reports suggest that Khan's loyalists are plotting behind the scenes, preparing to resist any attempt to strip away the mayor's powers. They see this as the beginning of a campaign to centralise control, a warning to every Labour mayor across the country that Starmer will tolerate no dissent, and they are ready to fight back. Imagine the headlines if Labour's mayors start turning on the Prime Minister, if the very people who are supposed to deliver Labour's message on the ground start attacking their own leader. The optics would be devastating. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are watching this implosion with glee. Tory MPs have wasted no time painting Labour as a party at war with itself. They point to Khan's bloated City Hall staff, his costly failures on housing and crime, and now his swollen salary, hammering Labour with accusations of hypocrisy. Do as we say, not as we do. That is the narrative the Tories are pushing. And the longer this crisis drags on, the more it sticks. For them, this scandal is political gold. Every headline about Labour's civil war is a distraction from their own problems and a chance to remind voters that Labour cannot even manage itself, let alone the country. But the most dangerous threat for Starmer is not the Tories, and it is not Khan's pay raise. It is the perception of weakness. In politics, weakness is fatal. The public does not forgive hesitation, and they do not reward leaders who look like they are being dragged into action rather than leading from the front. Already, commentators are whispering that Starmer should have acted months ago, that he allowed Khan too much freedom, that he only stepped in when the scandal became impossible to ignore. This makes him look reactive, not decisive, and if the public begins to believe that, his authority as Prime Minister could crumble. Khan, for his part, is refusing to bow. He is doubling down, insisting that he has a mandate from Londoners and that no Prime Minister can undermine that. It is a bold stance, but it is also dangerous, because the more defiant he becomes, the more he risks forcing Starmer's hand. If Khan refuses to backtrack, Starmer will be left with no choice but to escalate, and that escalation could trigger the unthinkable. A constitutional showdown between Downing Street and City Hall, with Labour tearing itself apart in the process. This is no longer a story about a £5,000 pay raise. It has grown into a battle for the soul of the Labour Party. A test of Starmer's leadership and a question of who truly holds power in Britain's capital. The fuse has been lit, the countdown has begun, and the explosion, when it comes, could shake British politics to its core. The confrontation between Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan has now reached its most dangerous phase. What began as a scandal over a £5,000 pay rise has transformed into a political war with no easy escape. Both men are locked in a high-stakes standoff, and the entire country is watching to see who blinks first. The Prime Minister has issued his threat, and the Mayor of London has made his defiance clear. The battle lines are drawn, and the fallout could determine not only their political futures, but the very survival of Labour's fragile unity. Inside Labour, the divisions are tearing wider every day. One camp argues that Starmer must go all the way, stripping Khan of his powers to prove that no one, not even the Mayor of London, is bigger than the party or the Prime Minister. They see this as a test of discipline, a chance to show voters that Labour has the strength to govern without tolerating arrogance or waste. For them, if Starmer falters now, his entire authority as leader collapses. But the other camp sees a looming disaster. They warn that a full-on clash will backfire, handing the Tories the biggest gift imaginable, a Labour Party at war with itself, too distracted by internal feuds to focus on the cost of living crisis, healthcare or economic recovery. They fear that punishing Khan could alienate Londoners, one of Labour's most important voting blocs, and fracture the coalition needed to win the next general election. The truth is simple, both sides are right, and that is what makes this so explosive. Starmer cannot afford to look weak, but he also cannot afford to risk a civil war. Yet those are the only choices left on the table, and the longer this drags on, the worse it gets. Every day the media is circling like vultures, turning the scandal into a feeding frenzy. Headlines scream about Labour's meltdown, front pages are plastered with Khan's salary figures, and talk shows buzz with speculation about whether the Prime Minister will dare to pull the trigger on the nuclear option. Legislation that would strip the Mayor of London of some of his powers and hand them back to Whitehall. If Starmer takes that path, it would be nothing short of historic. Never before has a Prime Minister so directly moved to weaken a sitting London mayor. It would trigger a constitutional battle, a furious backlash from City Hall, and an open revolt among Khan's loyalists. But it would also send a clear, brutal message: Keir Starmer will not be mocked, defied, or embarrassed. Not by the opposition and not by his own party. It would paint him as ruthless, willing to sacrifice even his closest allies to protect his authority. The risk is massive, but the reward, if it works, could solidify him as a leader who commands respect through fear and strength. But what if it backfires? Imagine the optics if Khan rallies Londoners behind him, portraying himself as the victim of a Prime Minister's overreach. Imagine the chaos if Labour voters in the capital turn against Starmer, if activists refuse to campaign, if the split grows so deep that it fractures Labour's chances of victory nationwide. For Starmer, failure in this confrontation would not just weaken him, it could destroy him. Because once a leader is branded as weak, once the public and his own MPs begin to see hesitation instead of strength, the countdown to collapse begins. Meanwhile, ordinary Londoners are not waiting for the outcome of this political chess match. They are angry, disillusioned, and searching for someone to blame. For them, this is not a game of power. It is about survival. It is about whether their leaders care more about personal pay rises and political manoeuvring than about the knife crime on their streets, the rent they cannot afford, the trains that never arrive on time, and right now both Starmer and Khan risk being seen as failures. The Prime Minister for not acting sooner, the Mayor for appearing to enrich himself while his city suffers. This is why the scandal has taken on such a dangerous life of its own, because it taps into the raw anger of a public that feels betrayed. The Conservatives smell blood. They are lining up to hammer Labour with accusations of hypocrisy and weakness. They are mocking the spectacle of Labour tearing itself apart, gleefully pointing out that while the country suffers, the party supposedly ready to lead is stuck in a civil war over one man's paycheck. Every day this continues is a victory for the Tories, a distraction from their own failures, and a reminder to voters that Labour cannot keep its own house in order. And yet the most shocking part of this crisis is that there is no easy escape hatch. Khan shows no sign of backing down. Starmer shows no sign of letting it slide. Both men have tied their reputations to this fight, and neither can retreat without humiliation. It is a zero-sum game now. One will emerge stronger, the other broken. There is no middle ground left. This is why insiders are calling it the biggest test of Starmer's leadership since taking power. This is why the Labour Party is bracing itself for impact, because when this explosion finally rips through, it won't just be about a mayor's salary or a prime minister's pride. It will be about who controls Labour, who controls London, and ultimately who controls Britain's future. The battle is not over. It has only just begun. And when the dust settles, one thing is certain: nothing will ever be the same again.